Hi, I'm Sylvie, and in this video, we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're gonna get real and we're gonna talk about why I don't really crochet anymore. And while I'm chatting, I'm also gonna be trying to seam rip-ish the serger thread that I put on this crochet slash sewing project, which is a pattern that I'm working on, which is kind of ironic with the whole purpose of this video, but I'll get to that later. I'm gonna go through the story of kind of how I started crocheting and kind of what it did positively and I guess negatively, and how high level bandanas started and now high level Sylvies. So if you want to know that, buckle in, maybe grab a drink or something, grab your crochet, grab your sewing, and you can listen to me yap. So my crochet journey kind of started in 2020, like I'm sure most of you guys. I am definitely a pandemic crocheter, and that's because I was living in Saskatchewan, Canada, and in the north of the province. So I was in a town of about 5,000 people, and I didn't know anybody, and it was the height of the pandemic. I had just moved there. It was my first time on my own. Like many other people, I decided that I needed a hobby. I needed to do something. I've always been a really creative person, and I actually picked up sewing. I got my first sewing machine, which is my little, this room is a giant mess. My fabric stash, which is all in here, has overflowed in now. It's this. My yarn stash still looks good, and then there's an ongoing project on my sewing table. But anyway, so I got my sewing machine, and that's kind of where it all began. So if you guys have been with me for a long time, you'll see that my name was High Level Bandanas, not High Level Sylvie, and that's because I started with making little dog bandanas. Eventually, I ordered a We Are Knitters kit, and I made my first knitted cardigan. I didn't really love knitting, and then I ordered a second kit, which I don't have a photo of, but it was this like crochet star pillow, and I really enjoyed crocheting. So that was my first experience with crochet. And from there, I was just kind of playing around. Because I was making dog bandanas in town, I'm just talking with my scissors in my hands. I decided that I would try to make dog bandanas out of crochet, and that kind of worked. But then from there, I started designing my own patterns, even though it started with just little triangles, and I sort of branched into amigurumi. This little Snorlax here is the first thing I ever made, the first ami that I ever made. So you can see it's kind of goofy. This is from a followed pattern. I didn't know how to make amigurumi at first, so clearly I didn't really know how to read patterns, and my tension wasn't the best thing ever, but he's pretty cute. So this is the first amigurumi that I ever made. And from there, I started making custom dog amigurumis because, again, I was making the whole like dog thing. So I started making like dog replicas. That's when I noticed that I really didn't like making amigurumi, and then I started making clothes. And that's when I got into pattern making and all of that. So my first pattern was this little like strawberry top thing. That was my first experience with holding a pattern test. And then from there, it went on to just a whole bunch of different patterns. The one that kind of grew my following was the strawberry cardigan, which is this guy right here with the waffle pattern, I guess. Top and bottom. So this is definitely the thing that sort of grew my following at first. And from there, it just kept going. I think every single day I was sort of thinking of what my next pattern would be. I always had yarn in my hands. All I could think of was crocheting, what my next pattern would be, holding my next pattern test, and I wanted these things to happen fast. It's like I had ideas on ideas on ideas, and it just wasn't stopping. I was just putting out a whole bunch of patterns and pattern tests, and it was so fun. And it was so fun to kind of build that community and interact with you guys. If you watch my videos, you might see this in the background more recently, but just a few things that I put out as patterns. So this corset, I have this little strawberry print sweater, these tank tops. These are my bookworm polos. I was so proud when I put this one out with the long alpaca sleeves and the little mesh detailing. My bobble sleeve sweaters. This one was one of my first ever patterns, actually, with the bobbles like that. I love it. We have the Hey Dude sweater. We have another sweet pea dress. This one has the pearls on it. More fruit cardigans, we have the watermelon, we have the blueberry. So as you can see, there was a lot of stuff in a very short time span. This is all falling. Also, I know that it's bad to hang your crochet. I need to find a better way to organize this whole entire room. So carrying on from there, I was still really happy crocheting everything all the time. And then I moved to Calgary, Alberta. So I moved to a much bigger town than the town that I was living in. And I started kind of regaining more of a social life. I met a lot of really, really great, amazing friends, and I started rock climbing again. I started kind of being more myself. I don't understand. You guys are also witnessing me undoing serging for the first time ever, but we must learn. So that's when I started noticing that I wasn't having as much fun writing new patterns. I was sort of branching into different styles of content as well at that point, like crocheting the motorcycle or just sort of vlogging how I made things, notably my wedding dress. Now that one is in a pile there. I will put photos up on the screen if you guys haven't seen that, but that's the thing that really made my Instagram sort of blow up. Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, I was getting millions of views on videos and people wanted to see how that was gonna go. And luckily for me, just the way that things worked out, because I started it like a year and a half before my actual wedding, then that series continued for a year and a half. And that wasn't done on purpose. It wasn't done to keep people's attention drawn in. That's just the way it happened. And I really was enjoying sharing the process for it, which was awesome. And at the same time, I had other really cool content ideas, more patterns I was somehow putting out, and I started getting fun brand collaborations and stuff. In January 2024, I applied to be a social media coordinator for Ribbler. You guys are crocheters, you definitely know what Ribbler is, or if you don't, it's a platform where creators can upload their patterns, and there's also a community on there where you can sort of meet other fiber artists. There's also sewing on there now. And that's because my full-time job is a pilot, and when you're on layovers, you have a lot of downtime just in hotel rooms and stuff. And I thought if I could do something remote, that would be a fun thing for me. It would feel fulfilling to have kind of like a second source of income. I don't know how, looking back, I really don't know how I was making as much content for my own social media and as much content as I was making for Ribbler simultaneously, because I must have been making around 10 pieces of content a week between the two accounts, which was pretty crazy now that I look back on it. But it was so fun and it was such a good learning experience. But if you guys are thinking this sounds kind of exhausting, planning a wedding, working full-time as a pilot, working part-time at Ribbler, working on my own social media, trying to keep posting patterns, etc., etc. Yes, that starts to get pretty exhausting. But somehow it was still working, although around that time I really did stop putting out patterns. I just focused on making content, and that's when I really started having fun with just crocheting for myself. I also picked up knitting around that time, which started branching me away from crochet a little bit because I had done so much crocheting, and then learning a new skill like knitting was so fun. Around that time, I also started doing a lot more sewing, and that passion sort of started there as well. I was sewing clothing and not just dog bandanas. June, July of 2024 rolls around. Our wedding is in September. Keep that in mind. And the aviation industry not being the most stable industry in the whole world, the base that I was working at in Calgary, long story short, shut down. So I had to find another job. So now I'm doing everything that I'm telling you that I'm doing, except we are putting the house on the market, still planning our wedding, and planning a move across the country to come back to Ontario, where my family is. So we left Calgary at the end of August. We drove for 5 days, and then we get to my parents, and then we get married, and then we go on honeymoon. And then we start brand new jobs. Now, as pilots, starting new jobs is kind of complicated because you have to do about 3 solid months of training. And for that, I was basically not in the city that I was living in for that whole 3 months. So that was crazy. On top of that, I am still working at Ribbler and trying to manage my own social media and still putting out content. So at that point, I stopped taking sponsorships. I stopped accepting packages to feature on my page because I just did not have the time or energy to put towards that, especially because I had to put all my time and energy towards my new job. Time that I had left, I was trying to put towards content creation for Ribbler because I was still working part-time for Ribbler. That is the story. I am no longer working with Ribbler. I now am focusing on putting time towards myself, and I really put a pin on crocheting. I think after all that training was done, I kind of just stopped crocheting as a whole. I stopped putting out patterns. I just couldn't really touch a crochet hook, to be honest. Crocheting has gotten me through the entire pandemic, through my moves. It has built this big community for me and has made me so happy and so grateful for everything that I have, but I just couldn't pick up a crochet hook anymore. I also then put a lot of my crafting time towards my king size puff quilt, which was crazy. Moving back here was really when I started just sewing and sewing and sewing and realizing that I'm good at sewing. I enjoy it. It's so mindless for me. I can just sit there with not even a podcast or anything on and just sew. And I love that. So that's why you've seen a shift towards sewing instead of crocheting. But I realized that most of my follower base was here for the crochet. I'm trying to pick up a crochet hook again. I'm feeling that spark. After I came back from Disney, I had a really good idea for a pattern that I wanted to make. So I am back in the pattern making. It's not going very well, but you know, I'm not putting this pressure on myself to try and put it out super fast, because that was something that was just really stressing me out with patterns, was deadlines and are they good enough? How do I market it? How do I make content out of it? And I just don't want to do that anymore. I don't want the stress about it. So I have been working on this pattern for a few weeks at this point. So I think I've yapped long enough, and I've actually yapped so much that I didn't really, I did a good number on it. You can't tell, but most of it has come out. I just need to pull out these loose threads. This is gonna drive me bonkers until I finish it, but you know, we are combining sewing and crochet, kind of like my Tate McRae corset. That was a fun one. Let me know what kind of things you would want to see from me. This was just a fun little random chit chat video because I needed something to do while I was pulling this thread out. I was also thinking it might be fun while I'm sewing or while I'm crocheting to do some live videos, just to kind of, like I said, if I'm bored doing this, to have people to chat with and subjects to talk about. But I don't know if anybody would actually watch that. So if you would watch that, or if that's something you would be interested in, definitely let me know down below. Now that you know my life story in crochet and why I don't really crochet anymore, I will leave you with a thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!